You're listening to Wuthering Heights by Emily Brontë, a Maison FORMS Access edition. Lightly modernized for clarity, faithful to the voice and structure of the original. Narrated in full from the 2026 edition. Clarity is Preservation. Chapter 1, 1801. I've just come back from visiting my landlord, the only neighbor I'll have to deal with. This place is truly stunning. I doubt there's anywhere else in England so utterly detached from the bustle of society. It's a misanthrope's paradise, and Mr. Heathcliff and I are perfectly matched to share this isolation. What a character! He had no idea how much I warmed to him when I saw his dark eyes retreat suspiciously beneath his brows as I rode up, and how his fingers burrowed deeper into his waistcoat with a guarded determination when I introduced myself. "Mr. Heathcliff?" I inquired. He responded with a nod. "Mr. Lockwood or your new tenant, sir? I've taken the liberty of calling as soon as I could after arriving, hoping I haven't caused you any trouble by my persistence in securing Thrushcross Grange. I heard yesterday you'd been considering—" "Thrushcross Grange is mine, sir," he cut in with a flinch. "I wouldn't let anyone trouble me if I could prevent it. Come in." The words "walk in" were spoken through clenched teeth, carrying the sentiment of "go to hell." Even the gate he leaned on showed no sympathy with his words, and I think that detail convinced me to accept the invitation. I was intrigued by a man who seemed even more intensely reserved than I was. When he saw my horse nudging the gate, he finally reached out to unchain it, and then led the way up the path with a sullen demeanor, calling out as we entered the courtyard, "Joseph, take Mr. Lockwood's horse and bring up some wine." This must be the entire staff, I thought, prompted by this all-encompassing command. No wonder the grass grows between the stones, and the cattle are the only ones trimming the hedges. Joseph was an elderly man, very old indeed, yet still robust and wiry. "The Lord help us," he muttered in a tone of irritable displeasure as he took my horse, looking at me with such a sour expression that I kindly assumed he needed divine help to digest his meal. And his pious exclamation had nothing to do with my unexpected arrival. Wuthering Heights is the name of Mr. Heathcliff's home. Wuthering is a meaningful local term, describing the atmospheric chaos the place endures during storms. They must have pure, invigorating air up there all the time. You can imagine the strength of the north wind blowing over the edge by the severe angle of a few stunted firs at the end of the house, and by a row of gaunt thorns all stretching their branches in one direction as if begging the sun for charity. Fortunately, the architect had the foresight to construct it robustly. The narrow windows are deeply recessed into the walls, and the corners are fortified with large, protruding stones. Before crossing the threshold, I paused to admire the abundance of grotesque carvings adorning the facade, especially around the main door. Above this, amidst a chaotic array of crumbling griffins and unabashed cherubs, I noticed the date 1500 and the name Hareton Earnshaw. I considered making a few remarks and asking the gruff owner for a brief history of the place, but his demeanor at the door suggested I should either enter quickly or leave entirely. I had no wish to test his patience before exploring the interior. A single step brought us directly into the family sitting room, with no intervening lobby or hallway. They refer to it here as the house, in the most distinguished sense. It generally includes both kitchen and parlour, but at Wuthering Heights, it seems the kitchen has been entirely relegated to another section. I could hear the chatter of voices and the clatter of cooking utensils deep within. Yet I saw no evidence of roasting, boiling, or baking near the massive fireplace, nor any gleam of copper pots or tin colanders on the walls. One end of the room, however, magnificently reflected both light and warmth from rows of immense pewter dishes, interspersed with silver jugs and tankards, stacked row upon row on a vast oak dresser reaching to the ceiling. The ceiling itself was exposed, of its entire structure visible to a curious eye, except where a wooden frame laden with oat cakes and clusters of beef, mutton, and ham obscured it. Above the chimney hung several old, menacing guns and a pair of horse pistols, with 3 brightly painted canisters arranged along its ledge for decoration. The floor was smooth, white stone. The chairs were high-backed, primitive constructions painted green, with 1 or 2 heavy black ones lurking in the shadows. Under the dresser, nestled in an arch, lay a large, liver-coloured pointer, surrounded by a lively litter of squealing puppies. Other dogs lingered in various nooks around the room. The room and its furnishings were typical of a straightforward northern farmer, with a rugged face and strong limbs, well suited to knee breeches and gaiters. Such a man, seated comfortably in his armchair with a frothy mug of ale on the round table before him, could be found within a 5 or 6 mile radius in these hills, especially if you visit just after dinner. However, Mr. Heathcliff stands in stark, contrast to his surroundings and lifestyle. He has the appearance of a dark-skinned gypsy, yet his dress and manners are those of a gentleman, at least as much as any country squire. He might be somewhat careless in his appearance, but his negligence suits him, given his upright and handsome form, though he carries a certain gloominess. Some might suspect him of harbouring a kind of unrefined pride. However, I feel a sympathetic connection that assures me this is not the case. I sense instinctively that his reticence stems from a distaste for ostentatious displays of emotion or mutual affection. He prefers to love and hate in secrecy, considering it almost intrusive to be loved or hated in return. But I'm getting ahead of myself, projecting my own traits onto him too freely. Mr. Heathcliff might have entirely different reasons for keeping his distance from potential acquaintances than I do. Let me entertain the notion that my nature is somewhat unusual. My dear mother often remarked that I would never find a truly comfortable home. And just last summer, I demonstrated how entirely unworthy I am of one, while enjoying a month of splendid weather by the sea. I found myself in the company of an utterly captivating woman, a true goddess in my eyes, as long as she paid me no attention. I never confessed my love aloud, yet, if looks could speak, even the simplest soul would have known I was utterly smitten. She eventually understood and returned my gaze, the sweetest look imaginable. And what did I do? I admit, with shame. I retreated into myself, like a snail. With each glance, I withdrew further and colder, until the poor innocent began to doubt her own senses. Overcome with embarrassment at her supposed error, she convinced her mother to leave. Because of this peculiar trait, I have earned a reputation for calculated heartlessness. How undeserved that is. only I truly know. I took a seat at the far end of the hearthstone, opposite the direction my landlord approached, and filled the silence by attempting to pet the mother dog, who had left her pups and was creeping wolfishly behind me, her lip curled and her white teeth eager for a bite. My attempt at affection was met with a deep, guttural growl. "You best leave the dog alone," Mr. Heathcliff growled in agreement, curbing her fiercer instincts with a nudge of his foot. "She's not used to being pampered, not kept as a pet." Then, striding to a side door, he called out once more, "Joseph!" Joseph mumbled something unintelligible from the depths of the cellar, showing no intention of coming up. So his master descended to him, leaving me face to face with the menacing bitch and a pair of grim, shaggy sheepdogs who shared her vigilant watch over my every move. Not eager to test their teeth, I remained still, but mistakenly thinking they wouldn't grasp silent provocations, I indulged in winking and making faces at the trio. Some expression of mine so provoked the madam that she suddenly erupted in fury and leapt onto my knees. I shoved her back and quickly positioned the table between us. This action stirred the entire pack. Half a dozen four-legged fiends of various sizes and ages emerged from hidden corners to converge on me. My heels and coattails became prime targets for their assault. Fending off the larger attackers as best I could with the poker, I was forced to loudly call for help from anyone in the household to restore her peace. Mr. Heathcliff and his man ascended the cellar steps with maddening calmness. I doubt they moved a second faster than usual, even though the hearth was a storm of snarling and barking. Fortunately, someone from the kitchen responded more swiftly. A robust woman, with her gown tucked up, bare arms, and cheeks flushed from the fire, burst into the fray, wielding a frying pan. She used that weapon and her voice so effectively that the chaos subsided as if by magic, leaving her alone, panting like the sea after a storm, when her master finally entered the scene. "What the devil is going on?" he demanded, eyeing me in a way I found hard to bear after such inhospitable treatment. "What on earth?" I muttered. "Those animals of yours, sir, could rival the demons in that herd of possessed swine. You might as well leave a stranger with a pack of tigers." "They won't bother anyone who doesn't touch anything," he replied, setting the bottle before me and righting the overturned table. "The dogs are just doing their job. Care for a glass of wine?" "No, thank you." "You're not bitten, are you?" "If I had been, I'd have left my mark on the culprit." Heathcliff's face broke into a grin. "Come now," he said. "You're a bit shaken, Mr. Lockwood. Here, have some wine. Guests are so rare here that my dogs and I admit, aren't quite sure how to welcome them." "To your health, sir." I nodded and returned the gesture, realizing it was pointless to brood over the antics of a few unruly dogs. Besides, I was reluctant to give him more amusement at my expense, as his humor seemed to lean that way. He, perhaps wisely considering the folly of upsetting a good tenant, softened his terse manner, dropping his habit of clipping pronouns and auxiliary verbs, and introduced what he thought might interest me: a discussion on the pros and cons of my current retreat. I found him quite knowledgeable on the subjects we covered, and before I left, I felt encouraged enough to offer another visit tomorrow. He clearly wanted no repeat of my intrusion, yet I intend to go back. It's remarkable how much more sociable I feel compared to him.